You know, every company spends a ton of time and money locking the front door, right? But what about the back door? Today, we're going to talk about that final, critical checkpoint for your data, the guard that stands between your company's most sensitive information and the rest of the world. It's so important, but honestly, it's often overlooked.
So what is this final guardian we're talking about? I mean, after all the data has been gathered, crunched, and processed, what is the absolute last line of defense? Well, it's the control that makes sure the final result is not only correct, but that it also lands only in the hands of people who are actually supposed to see it.
To really get why this guardian is so crucial, we've got to follow the data on its journey. You know, the stuff doesn't just pop up out of nowhere. It moves through a really clear and logical process. So, let's break that down.
Think about the data lifecycle in 3 simple steps, almost like you're baking a cake. First, you have the input. That's you gathering all your raw ingredients. Next up is processing, where the system follows the recipe perfectly to transform those ingredients. And finally, you get the output, the finished cake. And this is the moment of truth. This is where that final quality inspection has to happen.
And that final checkpoint is what we call an Application Output Control, or AOC for short. These are the safeguards that jump into action right before a report gets printed or a file gets emailed out. Basically, they have the final say before your data walks out the door.
Now, these AOCs aren't just one-trick ponies. They've got 2 jobs that are equally important. It's not enough to just make sure the data is right. It's also about controlling exactly who gets their eyes on it.
Okay, so here's the more official definition. An AOC is there to give reasonable assurance that whatever the application spits out is 1. Accurate and complete, and 2. Sent only to authorized people. That second part, it's absolutely critical. That's where so much of the risk is hiding.
So the whole thing really boils down to these 2 simple questions. First, accuracy. Are the numbers right? Are the calculations correct? Is the final result what it's supposed to be? And then, just as important, security. Who actually gets to see this valuable result? You have to get both of those right every single time.
So let's look at what this toolkit looks like in the real world. For accuracy, you might have a control like review and reconciliation. That's like comparing your big monthly sales report to the small daily logs to make sure everything lines up. For security, you've got things like output encryption to scramble the data in a file before you email it, or output distribution rules that make sure only senior leadership can open that annual financial report.
So what happens when these guardians fall asleep on the job? When the checkpoints are weak, or maybe they're not even there at all? Well, the stakes get incredibly high, and it can affect everything from your business strategy to your legal standing.
Let's just put a number on this to make it real. According to one major report, the average cost of a single data breach is a jaw-dropping $4.24 million. That's the cold, hard financial reality of what happens when these output controls fail. And that massive cost? It comes from a whole cascade of disasters. Bad data leads to bad decisions by management. Weak controls open the door for financial fraud. And of course, data breaches themselves lead to huge regulatory fines and penalties. And that's not even counting the complete loss of trust from your customers.
This quote from the source material really just says it all. A failure to protect the output isn't just some small IT problem. It's a direct threat to the financial integrity of the entire company. If you can't control who sees the report, you can't be sure the report itself is trustworthy.
Because these controls are so incredibly important, especially for financial reporting, there's a whole profession dedicated to testing them. Auditors are the ones who come in to make sure these guardians are actually on the wall and doing their job right.
The old-school way of doing this is very hands-on. Auditors will inspect system logs, looking for evidence that things were reviewed. They might even grab a small sample of data and manually recalculate it themselves just to check the system's math. And super importantly, they'll sit down and interview the people who are actually supposed to be running these controls every day.
But here's the big challenge in our modern world, right? How in the world do you use these old-school periodic checks to audit a massive system that's processing thousands of transactions a minute, 24/7 in real time? The traditional methods they just can't keep up. And this is where some really cool advanced techniques come into play. Instead of just spot checking, auditors can monitor the system as it's running. They might set up a fake test company and feed its transactions into the live system just to see how they're handled. Or they can embed audit alarms, little bits of code that automatically flag a high-risk transaction, like an unusually huge payment, and send an alert for immediate review. It's like having a digital auditor on the job around the clock.
Okay, so knowing all of this, what's the actual plan? How do you make sure your organization's final results are truly protected? Let's talk strategy.
The key here is to get proactive. First, you've got to embrace automated tools for continuous monitoring, not just yearly checkups. Second, double down on security by strengthening who has access to what and encrypting sensitive data before it even thinks about leaving your system. And maybe most importantly, you have to remember that your AOCs are only as strong as the ground they're built on. If your basic IT controls are weak, your output controls are built on sand, and they are eventually gonna crumble.
So we'll leave you with this one question to think about. After all the hard work your company does to collect, process, and check its data, is it possible that your most valuable information is just quietly walking out through an unlocked, unguarded back door?